r/Nosleep. Posted by u/Colin13. If you find a show called Chubby Show on an unused station late at night, do not watch it. Part 2. My head shot up. In the TV screen, a grainy image produced itself. 4 costumed beasts, standing on my front porch. They held their weapons at their sides, as if the job were no more casual than a package delivery. Boomer stepped back a foot or two, having rang the bell, waiting. They didn't blink, any of them. Nor did they breathe. I tried to imagine what was inside them. Beneath their costumes. Flesh? Couldn't be, I thought. The demons stood waiting on the porch. They held their menacing glares on the door and managed to maintain stillness. Without a breath or seemingly even a thought, they carried on waiting. A minute had passed. I checked the alarm clock in my corner. And then another. That was when they walked. Without a word. Chubby was the first to turn a shoulder, then Bam Bam, then Fatso, then Boomer. The 4 of them all faced the lawn, descended the steps up the porch, and started off down the lawn. Their car was off in the distance a ways, waiting for them in silence. They went around the corner, in front of my garage door. I figured they'd step ahead enough to where I could see them again. My grip on the cleaver loosened, sweat cooling on its handle. My breaths came more shallow. Chubby and friends seemed to be leaving. I sighed. My shoulders sloped down. I shut my eyes and leaned my head back, feeling the whole room spin around me. Where thoughts of Star Wars characters and homemade comics once roamed, now 1,000 nightmares seemed to plague me. The playground. My parents. The tall black thing in the cafeteria. I rested my head against the wall and checked the TV. Chubby and friends were gone. Then I squinted. Their car was still there, empty. Nobody was walking out towards it. My eyes shot wide open. My head flipped on itself. No, they weren't leaving. Of course they weren't going to. They were probably marching around in circles outside, looking for an entrance. Grayson, 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 lock all your doors, lock all your windows. The kids were screaming to me still. But every window was locked, and every door. Unless Chubby and friends thought about busting in, they had no entry. Crash. I jumped and screamed. Something had shattered. I powered off the TV. The room fell back into darkness. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. Breathing. Softly, from somewhere beneath the house, there were quiet footsteps echoing off of a concrete floor. Little clicks, ones that danced through the air. Click, 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 click. From the basement. They'd shattered the downstairs glass. I heard the door to the stairs open. They stepped up them, maintaining silence. All I heard was my own breath and the crunch of carpet. Not a voice dared to speak. Nothing was breathing but me. I saw them again, their breathless, motionless chests, standing unblinking on the porch. They stared with black eyes and held their weapons patiently. They were nearly up the stairs now. Their feet scraped the floor and weapons dragged slowly. I heard the sound of the axe grinding against tile. KCKCKCK. That was when I jumped in the closet. I shut both doors, left a crack, and pushed myself as far back as I could go, covering myself with the stacked bins of Legos in front of me. The footsteps were approaching now. From down the hallway, the axe cut through carpet. Crick, crick, crick. A shuddery breath escaped like a butterfly. I caught it in the air and crushed it in my hand. Grayson, don't make a sound, those kids seemed to whisper. There was something comforting about the closet. Like thousands of children's hands, patting me on the back, embracing me and whispering into my ears. It's going to be all right, they said. Well, I wasn't an idiot at age 7. I knew that's what they'd said to one another. Now they were no better than ghosts. I leaned farther back into the darkness, gripping the cleaver harder. The house was still so damned quiet. The axe dragged along the floor. Crick, 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 crick. They were nearly to the bedroom now. Crick, 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 crick. Their footsteps rumbled the house, the walls seeming to fall in over my head. I wondered if the roof could sustain itself with the weight of the demons. The floor shook again. Crick, 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 crick. Feet away. Crick, 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 crick. Still feet. Crick, crick, crick. Inches. Crick. They stopped. There wasn't a sound anymore, just the noise of the machine in the basement. The one with the giant metal teeth and the alarm red eyes, a conveyor belt carrying me into its maws. Sweat broke on my forehead. I clenched my jaws together and tried to keep them shut. Opening them meant screaming. In the closet my breath began to quicken, It huffed in and out like steam loosed from a kettle. I bit down on my teeth harder and grunted. "Grayson, Grayson, Grayson, don't you make a sound, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe, you have a knife, you have a knife, you have a knife, you have a knife. And someone has to die." I whimpered again, shaking in my skin. A minute had passed. Nearly 2. And no noise from outside the door. Just the ghosts in my head and the teeth in the basement. "Grayson, don't you make a sound, don't you?" Thud. Like someone stamping their foot, hard. Thud. Against the ground. Thud. The noises seemed to be coming in quicker succession. Thud. Faster. Thud. As if a bull were slamming its hooves. Thud, 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 thud. Or an elephant. Thud. Then it stopped. The room fell silent. The only thing in the house breathing was me. Every breath made my head got hot and cold, like my mind couldn't decide between staying awake or passing out. Then the TV turned on. Thud, 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 thud. The footage was grainy, the hooves stamping closer. In shades of gray, a costumed elephant charged down a hallway on the screen and thud, 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 thud. Grace un. Brack. The door shattered off its hinges. I was still in the back of the closet, screaming. The TV flipped channels in a screen of static. "Grayson. Grayson. Grayson. Grayson." The kids again. "Grayson. Grayson. You have to kill them." My heart thudded. Boomer looked straight toward me with wild eyes. "Kill them." I narrowed my eyes. Boomer held the knife over his head. I sprang up and swung the cleaver. It caught him in the gut and Boomer doubled over. The kids on the TV were all slapping and pounding the screen, the box rattling again. There were shapes rushing in through the doorway. Fatso. Bam Bam. Chubby. Fatso came first. He swung the hammer and missed. I caught his arm with the cleaver and ducked low, hacking at a leg. Fatso's head reared back and he screamed. I ribbed him with the cleaver as he fell and stood in the doorway. Bam Bam and Chubby squeezed in at the same time. I swung for Bam Bam and he dodged it. Chubby grabbed me by the arm and tightened his grip on my wrist. I screamed again. "Mom. Dad." The cleaver fell from my hand. There were tears welling in my eyes. Chubby yanked me towards him. He gripped me by the wrist. His fingers were harder than metal, but he wasn't a robot. Some sick pulse flowed throughout his skin. He craned his face down, to meet mine. Eyes inches from one another, Chubby held me close and tried to brush the tears from my cheeks. He soothed me, in a voice falsely calm. "Oh, Grayson, relax. You're going to learn so much." He leaned back a bit, Bam Bam standing over his shoulder. He raised the Tommy gun. "You're one of the luckiest kids alive." Everything spiraled through my mind again. The playground. My parents. The comics in my room. Jigsaw was my favorite clone I'd ever made. He would play dead and then come back alive, to win a fight. I saw the tall thing in the lunchroom again. "Grayson. Grayson. Grayson." The kids were still screaming. My heart beat in my chest. "Run. Run away." Jigsaw would play dead all day but he never really died. "Kill them. Kill them. Run away," I thought. I narrowed my eyes. Slammed my foot down. It caught Chubby's toes and he flinched back. I shook his grip off. On the floor was the cleaver. Crat-a-tot. The gun went off in lead spray. The rounds all missed. In the muzzle flash, Bam Bam came toward me. I zipped out of his way and hacked at his neck with the cleaver. It caught him in the throat and he bled black. Bam Bam gurgled, flopping to the ground. Chubby was across the room from me now, bent forward like a wrestler, waiting to strike. He started to circle around towards me. I went the opposite way, like we stood in a ring. Chubby inched forward a bit, taunting me. "There's no use, Grayson," he said. "We'll just find you later." Chubby laughed, playing with his axe. "You know we never really die, right? Just come back to life?" He laughed again. The blade shone in the TV's light. "We'll always be around to find you again." The kids on the screen had fallen silent, but the TV still rattled every few seconds. I could hear their voices echoing. "Grayson. Grayson. Grayson. Run." I did. I ducked backwards out of the bedroom. Chubby's feet pounded the floor behind me. I undid the lock on the front door and tried to rush out it. "Wait. Wait for me." Chubby hollered. "Don't go so soon." Chubby nearly grabbed me. I swung the cleaver and gouged his arm. Another spray of black. Chubby groaned, swinging the axe. It buried itself on the wall and I was on the porch. With quick feet I went across the lawn. The neighbor's house wasn't far. I was past our fences and on their grass, padding up their driveway. The concrete was cold underneath bare feet, scratchy and painful. "Mr. Harkins!" I cried out. "Mr. Harkins!" Their front door swung open. I turned around. Chubby was in the lawn, dragging his axe through the grass. He froze with me, staring with eyes that hadn't changed all night. Still they read differently. Fear. Mr. Harkins stepped out on his front porch. He had his Colt .45 in hand, the other holding a phone up to his ear. The old man pointed the gun at me and gasped. "Grayson? He's right there, Mr. Harkins, he's right there, he's on my lawn." Mr. Harkins started shooting. Rounds cracked in the night. He wasn't a good shot for his age. "Shit!" exclaimed the dog. Chubby charged across the lawn like a soldier and threw the axe behind him, landing it in the grass. Mr. Harkins stepped down his porch and peppered Chubby's car with bullets. Crat 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 crat. Click 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 click. The gun went empty. Harkins cursed and let the pistol fall to his side. He took the phone from his ear and screamed across the street at Chubby. He was hopping into the car, spinning the keys in the ignition and slamming hard on the gas. "Hope you rot in hell, you dirty son of a bitch," Harkins hollered. "I'll see you there and I won't miss this time." Chubby hit the end of the street, hardly waiting at the stop sign. Seconds later he was gassing it to the right, disappearing behind the rows of houses. His engine roared, but the night was otherwise silent. Moments later, it was all quiet except for the sound of Harkins and I breathing. He turned around, standing in the drive a few feet ahead, phone and pistol lowered at his sides. He must have heard everything, I figured. Harkins was always up late in the night, polishing weapons or watching movies. He never admitted it, but it was better than lamenting over his wife. The man's stone-hard eyes seemed to crack a little. He frowned beneath a handlebar mustache. My throat fell apart. I whimpered and something bit at my eyes. The police had already been on their way. Harkins had called them long before. He'd figured it was some bad fight my family'd gotten into and he was just the lonely old man caught in the crossfire. It's a damn good thing I lived next door to a paranoid. To a night owl. Might have been dead otherwise. I'm 22 now. I don't think a lot about the incident, but I know it's why I can't sleep at night. There's a reason I don't leave the TV on anymore. No, I don't think about it. There was nothing for the police to find when I got there. My parents were wide awake, although they couldn't remember a lot. They knew all the important details. They told the cops I'd been home all along. As for the bodies, they weren't there anymore. No blood, no weapons, no sign of entry besides the shattered basement door, just the axe in the lawn. There was no proof the gang had ever showed up, no proof other than my word and Mr. Harkins. When I tried to show one of the officers the channel I had clicked on, it was gone. Replaced with a box that said "unused station" in all caps. He chewed the back of his pen, pale. Then he glanced my way and nodded his head. For days, the police checked up on the house again and again to see if they could find any evidence. There were no fingerprints, no tufts of fur, nothing better than the tears in the carpet and the cracks in the tile. The axe, under further inspection, had no fingerprints, either. They found the bullet holes in the ground from the gunfire, but they didn't find any bullets. Chubby and friends had never existed. The cops had closed the case and labeled it an accident. Nobody in town believed them. Nobody but my parents. Definitely not Mr. Harkins. I used to go over to his place a lot, after the whole thing had ended. Usually he made me a cup of coffee, the older I got. We'd sit in his dusty old living room and talk for a while. I tried to ignore the towels draped over picture frames here and there. There were only two, but I noticed them. It's like trying to leave a body in your house and expecting it won't stink. Everything smells worse when it's your dead wife. Harkins would do a lot of the talking. Give me wisdom, encourage me not to waste my life, try to teach me what a man was like. He said he liked my dad, he just thought he wasn't good at that. He said he thought I was scared. Like most kids are. But more than usual. Harkins would lean back in his chair, sip his mug, and stare at me all the while. Then he'd lean forward again. Steam blowing out of the cup. There are sick people in this world. Your father wouldn't like me using these words. He sniffled. There's some real sick bastards out there, kid. He restated. Harkins stared into his coffee mug, watching the steam boil out of it. Then he took a slower sip, leaning his head back and wiping his lip. He stared back at me, eyes getting thin, growing gray, and he pursed his lips together, watching the floor. He seemed as if he'd fallen down, woken up somewhere in the past. They'll use you. He told me. The kids are the easiest to take. He frowned and swallowed. They can scream but they can't throw a punch. Harkins lifted his gaze again, eyes towards me. Then he threw his head back and took another sip of coffee, gulping it down.